Hey kids, Mr. Fly here, hope you're well and welcome to another bike news here on the channel. It's June 2019, another month has whipped by and we've got 5 motorcycle news to have a look through. So if you're interested in what's been going on in the world of motorcycles in the UK for the last month, stick around and stay tuned. Okay then, so as has been the norm for the last few bike news, I'm going to do this as a two-parter. This is part 1. Part 2 I'll post on Saturday, otherwise this will be far too long. So loads to go through here. I've picked out something like 12 stories here, and then all, by the way, at the end of part 2 as well, I've got some parish notices, some stuff about what's coming up on the channel over the next few weeks as well. So if you're a regular viewer, stick around, stay tuned for part 2 coming up on Saturday. I'll let you know what's coming up on the channel after that one. Okay, let's get stuck into the bike news then. The first paper here that we've got, first story I've picked out a little while ago since I read these, so a little bit of a surprise. Flat track kit for Indian FTR. Ah yes, the Indian FTR. This is a bike that seems to be causing quite a lot of commotion in the bike world. Well, by commotion I mean that in a good way. I'm seeing lots of coverage of this on social media and elsewhere. An absolutely beautiful bike. I think flat trackers are possibly the way it's going for like the next 12 months. We've sort of been in a bit of a scrambler thing, haven't we, for the last year, I guess. I love scramblers. I think flat trackers are the way it's going now. Looking forward to maybe some of the other manufacturers coming out with flat trackers. But anyway, the Indian flat tracker, the FTR, is out and about now, the FTR1200. And a company called Race Perform, who are they called? Hang on a minute. S&S Cycle are the company behind this, and they've put together this race kit that they're dubbing the Hooligan, that basically you can buy and bolt on to your FTR1200 to turn it into this flat track racer lookalike. Beautiful looking bit of kit. In fact, once you put it on, it reduces the weight of the bike by 25 kilograms, which is not to be sniffed at. That's amazing. It's got stainless steel 2-in-1 exhaust, which looks incredible. Amazing billet wheels from Roland Sands design. Just looks really nice. New yokes as well. Looks good. Unfortunately, no pricing yet available for it, so we don't know how much it's going to cost. If you've got yourself an Indian flat tracker, I've not seen one yet in the wild, then you can do this to it. Absolutely lovely, but it'll be interesting to see how much it costs. That was at the bike shed, by the way, which I didn't manage to get to, but yeah, you may have seen that bike if you went down there. So that was the first thing. I just want to point it out. I just think it looks a lovely motorcycle, and yeah, bolt-on kits, I'm all for that. If it enhances it, and losing 25 kilograms, not to be sniffed at. Right, next thing I've pulled up here, BMW set their sights on States. This is this sort of concept bike that they've come out. They're calling it the R18. It's the biggest ever BMW Boxer twin engine, 1800cc, 1.8 litres on a bike, and it's on this sort of bobber-esque style machine. Now they're calling it a statement of intent rather than a proof of concept or pre-production bike, so we'll see what happens. But again, all the musterings I've been hearing you know, on social media and so on, is that people absolutely love this. I love the looks of this. Wouldn't it be amazing if BMW actually produced this? Goodness knows how much it would cost, and of course it is aimed at the US market. I'm not sure a bike like this would, the dynamics would quite work on the UK roads, but it would be lovely to have the chance, wouldn't it? It looks absolutely awesome. They reckon it's going to put out over 100 horsepower. It's air-cooled as opposed to water-cooled. It's just a clean-looking design. I think it looks beautiful. I imagine it will cost an absolute fortune. Just having a quick scan through here to see if it says when we think we might see this or not. It says here, likely to see possible production bikes Milan show in November, which is interesting. And their MCN are asking whether, you know, this concept bike will resemble the production bikes at all. Sometimes we look at these concept type bikes and think, oh yeah, can't wait for that to come out. And then when we see the actual production machine, because of regulations and so on and homologation issues, love that word, just want to get homologation in, they don't always look much like the original concept we saw. So let's hope this one retains that though, because that does look incredible and would certainly be an amazing new departure for BMW, wouldn't it, to have a bike like that. BMW, with things like the S1000 RR, are so removed now from their sort of boring old man's image, or starting to get there. This can only help, I think. All right, next story. Oh yeah, wind noise test scare is here. Now this is the University of Southampton have done some research on behalf of a company called Auritech. They make earplugs, and it's shown, and this is something I knew anyway actually, that if you don't ride with earplugs at motorway speeds, you can damage your hearing permanently in a matter of minutes. Now I did a video about this actually probably a couple of years ago about whether it is worth wearing earplugs, because I always wear earplugs. You see me wear my orange earplugs. They're from Custom Fit Guards, who sponsored this video coincidentally, so thank you to those guys. I always wear those, particularly if I'm on tour. It doesn't matter if I'm on what seems like a quiet bike or one of my noisy bikes, because hearing, unlike so many things in your body, once you've damaged it, it ain't getting fixed. You start to knock off the high frequency response and it ain't coming back again. So if you don't wear it with earplugs now, I highly recommend that you think about doing so. If you're a new new rider and you're thinking about buying your kit and so on, definitely invest in a decent pair of earplugs, because you know, your hearing, you can't get it back once you've lost it. I'll try, if I remember, I'll stick a link in the corner, a card, to that original video I did, which goes into some depth about, you know, why I wear earplugs. So do check that one out. So just thought I'd point that one out, interesting. All right, next one here. Oh, it's a bit of self-promotion. Blog off. Expertise snobs have no place in biking. This is the monthly article that I write for MCN, and this particular one, in case you haven't read it, I talked about things like doing wheelies on the road, getting your knee down, chicken strips, that sort of thing. Whether actually these are important this day and age when if you're just a road rider. I'm just a road rider. I like enjoying my bikes, riding around the lanes, sedately mostly, but I don't do things like wheelies, and I don't really care about chicken strips. I get a lot of trouble, or a lot of people comment on the fact that I've got chicken strips on my tyres. It's water off a duck's back to me. And also I don't get my knee down on roundabouts either, and I argued on here there's no place for that sort of thing on the road anyway. I only mention that because we'll come back to it again in a moment, but I would be interested in the comments below to hear what you think about that. If you're a road rider, are you keen on getting your knee down as you go around a corner? Do you work on getting rid of your chicken strips? And do you like doing wheelies down the public highway, or should all that stuff be left to the track, which is what I said in that article? Okay, we'll come back to that in a minute. All right, next one, next story. Mini Adventure all but finished. Here we go. This is spy shots of KTM's new 390 Adventure. Now basically this is like a mini copy of the bigger 790 Adventure, which has got you know, fairly critical plaudits. I rode the 790 Adventure R recently. Loved the bike, but for me personally I found it quite tall, but I've not ridden the standard 790, mind you, which is a little bit shorter. This is one that's going to be even more accessible than that, based on the KTM 390 Duke, loosely. So it's going to be that sort of power output, but in an adventure form. I have to say, it looks really nice. It's A2 friendly, I believe, which means that it's a bike that sort of a dual sport bike. That means if you're getting into biking, you could select something like this. I guess it's going to go up against things like BMW's GS 310 and the Himalayan, or Himalayan as it's correctly pronounced, from Royal Enfield. So yeah, so this is going to be an interesting bike to see how it turns out. Just looking at some of the stuff here, it's saying that the engine is shared with the 390, but it's got a bit of a retune. Doesn't, you know, that makes sense. Good all-rounder, of course. It's made by KTM's partner in India. Many bikes are made in India and Thailand now. I don't even know why we have to mention that anymore. As long as the quality control is there and the bike's good, who cares where they're made, is my view. And also they're talking about maybe an R version coming with a single seat as well. But anyway, that's another one to watch. I think you know, bikes at the smaller end, I think is really where it's at, and not just for new riders either. Certainly for me, as I get older, I'm thinking smaller bikes are more fun. I've said this so many times, but it's so much more fun riding a small bike to the limits of its capability than not tickling even the, you know, anything in a really powerful bike. When I say tickling, you know what I mean. Not accessing any performance on the bigger bikes, which are great on the track, but not so good on the road. Okay, going to extremes. This is one of these head-to-head comparisons that MCN do that I'm so keen on. Now, these are actually two bikes that neither of which I've ridden. This is the Diavel 1260S. I've only ridden the old 1200 Diavel, and the Harley Davidson FXDR, both sort of sports cruisery type bikes. I do love the looks of the Diavel, I must admit, and this Harley looks good as well. Never ridden any Harleys, I must get that right at some point. I only brought this out because the verdict on this one was quite something. I often criticise MCN for their verdicts being a bit wishy-washy and both bikes having the same mark. In this case, the Harley Davidson came out with 3 stars out of 5, and the Diavel came out with 4 stars out of 5. But what I like on this is Phil West's conclusion when he talks about the Harley. He's not mincing his words. So he says, the FXDR, although it looks decent, delivers a traffic light... Let's say that again. Although it looks decent, delivers as a traffic light blaster and has some charm, but it ultimately disappoints. It's needlessly uncomfortable, has limited practicality, is sparsely equipped and offensively priced. So, blimey. So in other words, don't get the Harley is what he's saying, but it does look cool. But there we go. So yeah, that was quite a scathing review for that. But the Diavel's the one that came out on top of that particular review. I guess not a big surprise when you think about it. Okay, next up, this is the long-awaited Yamaha Tenere 700. Again, I've often mentioned here on this slot and elsewhere on the channel that I think these mid-sized adventure bikes are where it's at. And Yamaha have been teasing us with the Tenere 700 for ages. And they've taken a different approach, it turns out, here with the 700 than, say, BMW have with their F850 GS, and Tiger have with their Triumph have with the Tiger 800s. Because what Yamaha have done have not only cut down on the engine size of this adventure bike, but they've made it not technically over the top as well. So there's no electronics on this other than ABS, which I think is switchable anyway for off-road riding. The result is you get a cheaper, better value bike that does all the good things you want anyway, but isn't overwhelmed by electronics. So some of the headlines here, it's got 74 brake horsepower, which more than enough for on-road and off-road as far as I'm concerned. 187 kilograms dry, so quite light, and the price is 8,699 on the road, so less than 9 grand, and you get this proper adventure bike that is more than capable of taking you around the world. I mean, if you want to do a around the world trip or a long overland trip, this is the sort of bike I think that you would do it on. The looks for me, very Dakar-esque. I'm not sure I like that upright look, but the reviews I've seen of it have all been positive. Looking forward to getting a go on one of those in the future at some point if I can get my hands on one. It's quite difficult for me to ride Yamahas because I don't actually talk to Yamaha, or rather they don't talk to me. But I am friendly with the local dealer, so maybe when these are available at dealers I can get a ride on one of them, but it ain't going to be any time soon, I guess, which is a bit sad. Okay, and then the last story in this first paper for part 1 is this, Back to the Future. This is Kawasaki's W800, the new version. This is a bike that was around a few years ago and then it fell out of production, and now Kawasaki have brought it back. Because, of course, retro bikes are all the rage, as we know. And this thing looks absolutely lovely. Now, I never rode the original or the previous version of the W800. I haven't ridden this one either. Again, a bit like Yamaha, Kawasaki don't talk to me. Well, they do talk to me, but they don't give me bikes. But that's another story. But I would love a go on this one. It looks fantastic, but my point with this one is, and it's A2 friendly as well, by the way, so if you're a new rider, you can ride one of these straight off, so that's great. The thing is with this, it looks lovely, it's A2 friendly, which is great, but it's £9,099. That's quite expensive, isn't it? So it's more expensive than, well, when you look at it, to me, I'm a big fan, if you've seen my recent videos, of the Royal Enfield Interceptor. This is getting on for twice as expensive as that on the road. Is this twice the bike? I don't know, I haven't ridden it. I can't imagine it is. It looks like the fit and finish is lovely. I like the sports cowling on it, but when you look at the actual side of the bike, it doesn't really look any better than the Royal Enfield. If you're going to go for a retro bike, I like them to be sort of authentic, and for me the Royal Enfield gives you that. This is more authentic looking to my definition, whatever that is, than say the Triumphs, which are of course do have a nod to retro styling, but a very thoroughly modern bike. So I imagine this one has quite a bit of character. It looks like it's proper air-cooled as well, so it's going to have some character about it, nice and thrummy exhaust I expect, but £9,099 just seems way too expensive for a bike like that. Anyway, but it looks nice, maybe I'll get a go on it at some point, who knows. Alrighty, that's it for the first paper. Moving on to the second one then. What's the first two I've got here? Ah, yeah, this is amazing. Couple of stories actually on the first page here. This first one, I can't thank him enough. Roadside heart surgeon commended after saving biker's life. This is an incredible story where a biker came off his machine up north somewhere. Warrington biker John O'Brien, this was, had the unfortunate accident. Ended up getting attended to by emergency service at the side of the road, and his heart stopped. And the medical officer on scene, if I can quickly find his name, Dr. Mark Forrest. No, he was the guy that, yes, it was, I think. Hopefully I'm getting that right. Yes, it was Mark Forrest. When the guy's heart stopped, decided he had to do surgery on the road. Can you imagine that? He opened his chest on the roadside and did open heart surgery on the guy, got his heart, well, started massaging the heart, got it working again, and he's now absolutely fine. Isn't that incredible? Can you imagine? These are the people that really earn their money, aren't they? Actually opening somebody's chest on the side of the road and getting them going again. Unbelievable. So yeah, just an amazing story, and thank goodness people like that are around. Thank you, Dr. Mark Forrest, and well done, Mr. O'Brien, for being around with us still. And yeah, what a story, and just a reminder for all of us just to be careful out there. Next story on this page, Enfield's new Bullet Trials. Now, having mentioned just now that I'm a big fan of Royal Enfields, which I certainly are, this one I'm not so sure of. They brought out a new sort of a scrambler-y type machine, or a trials bike certainly, based on the Bullet. Now, the Bullet is the single-cylinder Royal Enfield that's been around for absolutely donkey's years. In fact, I think I'm right in saying it's the motorcycle that's been in the longest production of any. It's been in production for more than 50 years, and the technology on it hasn't changed that lot, to be fair. It has got electronic fuel injection now, but it's a kickstart, etc. I've not ridden the Bullet. I rode the Classic, which is a very similar machine. And although it's full of character, and I really love the way the Classic looked, which is a bit like this, the riding experience is something else, I'll tell you, in not a good way, not compared to the modern twin-cylinder Royal Enfields that we've seen of late, the GT and the Interceptor. So this particular bike that this is based on, I'm not a massive fan on in terms of its riding characteristics and dynamics. And also I'm not sure I like the looks of this. So this is, I think, and I'll be interested in your views on this too, Royal Enfield have missed the mark with this. Number one, I don't like this mix of chrome and green, just doesn't work with me. I don't think that single cylinder engine actually has much life left in it. They should have put the twin engine in, I think. I'm just not sure about this. It's 499cc, so it'd be a right thumper. Puts out 27.2 brake horsepower, so not a lot. 192 kilograms and 4,700 quid. Would you rather have one of these than an Interceptor or a GT? I think not, and they're not very much more expensive. Anyway, be interested to hear what you think about that one. Glad that Royal Enfield are trying this. What I'd like to see, though, really, is a Scrambler or flat tracker version of the Interceptor, the twin cylinder bike that they're currently doing, rather than going back to these older models that aren't in the same league as the current twins, is my view. Okay, next story. TT stars go to Goodwood. Now, have you ever been to Goodwood Festival of Speed or the Revival? Absolutely brilliant events. I've been there a few times. The issues with them are getting in and out can be a night pain, just like all these popular events. I've been lucky enough to fly myself in a few times. That's definitely the way to do it, but it works out a very, very expensive day out. But yeah, if you ever get the chance to go, you should at least go once in your life. The atmosphere at these events are brilliant. And the Revival, which is what this is referring to, is a slightly different feel to the Festival of Speed. It's a bit less manic. People dress up, a bit more of a garden party feel, a bit easier to get in and out of as well. But at this year's Revival, which is being held on September the 13th and 15th, they've got a whole bunch of TT stars going along. So we've got John McGuinness, Dean Harrison, Peter Hickman, Michael Dunlop, Michael Rutter, Gary Johnson, James Hillier, Connor Cummins, Lee Johnston. Basically, all the TT stars that I can probably name that are still going are going along to the Revival. So if you're a TT fan and you didn't get to the Isle of Man this year and you can get down to Goodwood Revival, get that in your diary, go along. I'm not sure if I'm around September the 13th to 15th, but I'd love to go along if I am. So you never know, might see you there. So one for the diary. Must make a note in my diary, that one, actually. Check that out. Okay, next story. Naked Ducati V4 prototype spied. What do you make of this? This is the first spy shop, and we'll talk more about this, I think, in part 2 of the review on Saturday, because we've got some more detailed pictures coming. But this is the first views of this naked Ducati, based on the Panigale, which they're bringing out for the Pikes Peak race over in the US. They've basically taken the fairing off a Panigale and done some other bits, presumably. It's difficult to tell from this one picture. It's got that disguising tape on. But just wondered whether you thought we need a naked Panigale. We'll look more about this, as I say, when we've got some better pictures in part 2, where we can see the bike more. But here we are. This is just MCN saying that this is proof that there is a V4-based Street Fighter on the way. And they're expecting it to put out about 185 brake horsepower and be priced around about £15,000, which sounds, for a Ducati premium, sounds about right. There might be an S model as well, they're speculating, for 17,500. They're expecting, again, production bikes to be shown at the Milan show in November, so we'll keep our eyes peeled for that. Not too sure whether I like that or not, but as I say, we'll talk more about that in part 2 on Saturday. Okay, next one here. Knee down isn't just showing off. This is great. This is so this is the letters page, and the reason why I mentioned my article in the previous paper, because somebody here, Dave Wills, who got letter of the week in fact for this, is criticising my article, which is fine. I'm all for that, saying that actually he couldn't disagree more with me on the getting your knee down. He's saying that actually if you're able to get your knee down, that makes you a better rider, and so everybody should do it. So learn. I'm kind of praising here. But he's saying, you know, go and learn it and it'll make you a better rider. And MCN have made that their star letter. So there we go. What do we think about that? I'm just chuffed that somebody read my article enough to want to write something in. And I'm double chuffed that MCN made it the star letter. So there we go. What do you make of that? Do you think getting your knee down is something that all motorcyclists should have that skill, whether you use it or not? Don't know. I mean, I sort of get the point. Maybe it's one of those things to have in the bag that would make you a better rider if you could do it. But I'm not sure that we need to all go practicing around roundabouts on a Sunday morning to do it. Before we know it, there'll be noise cameras everywhere. More about that later, I'm sure, as well. Okay, so to the final story in part 1 of this bike news. Simon Ralph, he's borrowed or has got for his long-term test bike, the Triumph Scrambler 1200 XE. The XE being the top of the line model, as it were, and he's loving it. He's been using it off-road and so on. The XE is the version of the bike that is designed for more off-road. Now, I mention this because I recently borrowed an XC for a couple of weeks from Triumph, and I've got loads of videos coming up on that. A lovely bike, really beautifully finished, all sorts of technology on it, which of itself, I find that sort of juxtaposition a little bit odd. If you're going to have a retro bike, I think I want a simple retro bike, not one that's laden with technology and TFT screens like the Scrambler is. But nonetheless, it is a nice bike, and I enjoyed riding it. But what I didn't do was take the bike off-road, because I just found the thing really top-heavy. So Ralphie here, obviously a taller fella than me. It doesn't say how tall he is, I don't think. I'm only 5'8", so a medium-sized guy. I found the smaller version of the bike, the XC, X-Ray Charlie, even that was too heavy to take off-road for me personally. If I was brave and it was my bike, I might do it, but given the fact that I'd have to pay money if I dropped it and damaged it, I decided against it. But Ralphie thinks it's great. He's got his Muddy, and he's been doing it on the XE, which is the even taller one, so well done him. But what do you rank of the Triumph Scrambler? Now we've seen it for a while. Have you had a chance to ride it? What do you make of it? Anyway, there we go. So that's the second paper of June's bike news review. Got another 3 to go through in part 2 and parish notices. So if you're around on Saturday, do watch the channel, because I'm going to be reviewing those on Saturday. All right, stick around, stay tuned for that then, and I look forward to speaking to you next time. Until then, this has been Mr. Fly. Cheerio.